Welcome, listeners, to The Deep Dive. This is Complete Aviation Solutions Deep Dive number 105.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really cutting through the noise. We
Yeah.
want to explore the dramatic interplay of forces shaping global aviation right now.
Mhm.
Our mission, as always, is to distill the key knowledge quickly, thoroughly, give you a real shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
Yeah, and we're drawing insights directly from the very latest information.
Exactly. Looking at immediate crises, the iron hand of regulation, which we'll definitely get
Oh,
into,
yes.
and some surprising new strategic shifts. These are determining who soars, who struggles, and, well, who carves out entirely new opportunities.
And that's really the essence of the global aviation industry, isn't it? At this moment, anyway.
Yeah.
It's this complex, always evolving landscape. You've got operational challenges, strict regulatory actions, these pivotal strategic business shifts.
Yeah.
They're all interconnected.
Right.
The stories we're diving into today, they perfectly illustrate just how dynamic this whole environment is.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Let's start with a really significant piece of news coming out of Delhi. We're looking at a large scheduled carrier. They're making some pretty substantial operational adjustments right now.
That's right.
What's the core of these changes?
Well, the headline is a noticeable reduction in their wide-body operations.
Wide body.
Yeah, they're trimming flights operated by their B777s and B787s by a full 15%.
15%.
Yeah, and these cuts, they're set to remain in effect until at least July 15th, so not just a brief tweak.
No, a 15% reduction isn't minor at all. What's driving such a significant move?
It's actually a combination of two major factors.
Okay.
Firstly, they've implemented enhanced pre-flight safety checks. This is a direct internal response following that tragic crash of one of their B787-9s in India earlier this month.
Right, the one with significant fatalities both on board and on the ground, sadly.
Exactly. Devastating incident. So heightened safety protocols, that's one part.
And the second driver?
The second is, well, the simple necessity to accommodate longer flight durations.
Ah, because of the airspace closures.
Precisely. Those ongoing closures in the Middle East, they're forcing many long-haul routes to adapt, adding significant time to flights.
Which means the planes just can't turn around as quickly.
Exactly. You need fewer rotations from the same aircraft to cover the schedule reliably.
That paints a very clear picture, doesn't it? How both safety concerns and geopolitical realities are having this direct, tangible impact on their network.
Absolutely.
Can you give us a sense of what this means for specific routes? Are major destinations affected?
Definitely. We're seeing 3 long-haul routes completely suspended for now.
Okay, which ones?
That's Delhi to Nairobi Jomo Kenyatta, Amritsar to London Gatwick, and Goa Mopa, also to London Gatwick.
So Africa and UK connections hit there.
Yes, and beyond those suspensions, many of their existing services across Asia, Australia, North America, and Europe will see reduced frequencies.
So fewer flights, basically.
Fewer flights on key international connections, yeah.
And it's not just their wide-body operations being trimmed, is it? I think I read they're making other adjustments, too.
That's correct. They're also making some additional voluntary reductions in their narrow-body flying.
Voluntary. Why add those cuts?
Well, this is aimed squarely at bolstering network-wide operational stability, trying to minimize those really frustrating last-minute cancellations that, can plague the passenger
Yeah,
experience.
trying to build in more buffer.
Exactly. These particular narrow-body cuts, they're actually less than 5% of their total narrow-body network, so smaller scale.
Okay.
But they're also effective until at least July 15th, same time frame.
So smaller percentage, but still a strategic move for reliability. Which narrow-body routes are affected there?
3 specific routes are being suspended entirely. That's Bengaluru International to Singapore Changi,
Okay.
Pune also to Singapore, and Mumbai International to Bagdogra. And on top of those, there are other domestic cuts, primarily impacting services out of Mumbai and Delhi, and also the Chandigarh-Bengaluru city pair. It's a pretty comprehensive effort to streamline operations.
Now, you mentioned earlier the crash that prompted some of these safety check changes. What's been the broader regulatory response, both to the crash itself and, well, to the airline's operations more generally?
Yeah, and what's truly insightful here is the distinction the regulator made.
How so?
Well, those comprehensive engine and airframe safety inspections across their entire B787-9 and B787-8 fleets, they're now complete.
Right.
And the regulator found no significant aircraft safety concerns directly related to the crash itself.
Okay, that's a crucial point.
It is. The investigation into the crash itself, that's obviously ongoing, takes time. But the immediate airworthiness of the rest of the fleet, that seems to have been cleared.
So the initial safety concern about the aircraft type itself seems to be resolved, at least for now. That's a relief.
It is.
But does that shift the focus then? Perhaps entirely to human factors or operational compliance? What's the next layer of regulatory scrutiny we're seeing here?
Precisely. You've hit it. While the aircraft integrity wasn't the immediate concern from that specific crash investigation finding, the regulator immediately pivoted. They took a different and very significant action.
Okay.
They issued what's called a show cause notice to the airline.
Right.
And this concerned two specific flights between Bengaluru and London Heathrow that operated way back in May.
Okay, and for listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly is a show cause notice in this context?
You can think of it as a formal demand for explanation. It's basically the regulator saying to the airline, explain why we shouldn't take certain enforcement actions against you.
Okay, so defend yourself.
Pretty much.
Mm.
In this specific case, the core issue was that the crew on those two particular flights exceeded their legal working time limits. Flight duty time limitations, FDTL.
A serious breach.
Very serious. But, crucially, this wasn't presented as just an isolated incident. A letter from the regulator, dated June 20th, actually acknowledged the airline's own voluntary disclosures of what they termed repeated and serious violations.
Hold on. The airline disclosed repeated and serious violations themselves.
Yes, voluntary disclosures, which is interesting. But the regulator's letter then detailed the nature of these violations.
Repeated and serious sounds like it points to something much deeper than just a couple of isolated scheduling errors. What kind of violations are we talking about?
Exactly. It suggests a pattern. These included unauthorized and non-compliant crew pairings, meaning putting pilots or cabin crew together who shouldn't have been flying together according to rules, maybe due to experience levels or qualifications.
No.
Also, breaches of mandatory licensing and recency norms.
Recency norms.
Yeah, that means pilots and cabin crew weren't maintaining the required recent flight experience or specific training needed to stay current on type or procedures.
Okay, that sounds fundamental.
It is. The regulator identified what they called a systemic failure in scheduling protocols and the oversight of those protocols. It really does suggest a broader pattern of compliance issues, not just one-offs.
Wow. That sounds like a systemic breakdown in pretty critical safety areas. What were the tangible consequences then? For the airline, for its personnel?
Well, the regulator acted quite decisively. 3 named airline officials were immediately directed to be removed from their operational roles.
Removed completely.
Removed from operational roles, yes, and reassigned to non-operational duties. They also face internal disciplinary proceedings within the airline itself.
Okay.
And the regulator concluded this action by issuing a very, very stern warning. They stated that any future violation of crew scheduling norms, licensing requirements, or flight time limitations will attract strict enforcement action.
And strict action means?
That could include substantial penalties, fines, license suspension for individuals or the airline, or even the outright withdrawal of operator permissions, basically threatening their ability to fly.
That is about as clear a warning as you can get. It just underscores how absolutely critical strict regulatory compliance is in every single facet of aviation.
Absolutely. No room for error.
And just for context here, what kind of scale are we talking about for this carrier? It's a major player, right? Not a small operation.
Oh, absolutely. This is a very large airline. They currently operate 198 aircraft,
Wow.
serving 87 destinations with 163 routes. They're running about 697 daily flights.
Right. So these adjustments, these regulatory actions, they aren't just minor internal hiccups. They have potentially significant ramifications across a vast network.
Exactly. And it sends a very clear message across the entire industry, not just to them.
Speaking of regulatory actions, let's shift gears a bit. Let's look at a case with an even more definitive outcome, though perhaps less detailed in the public domain. This story comes out of Sofia, Bulgaria. It involves a passenger charter airline whose operating license was recently revoked, completely revoked.
Yeah, and this certainly raises an important question for industry watchers. What exactly led to this? The order from the Bulgarian Civil Aviation Administration to annul their license was issued back on May 9th.
Oh, yeah.
And the stated reason was the airline's non-compliance with the terms set out in its Air Operator's Certificate, or AOC.
Right. And for listeners, just remind us, what does an Air Operator Certificate, the AOC, what does that signify? Why is it so crucial?
It's essentially the airline's fundamental license to operate commercial flights. It certifies that the airline has the professional ability, the organization, the procedures, the resources, everything needed to ensure the safety of operations, adhering to all the necessary national and international regulations.
So when that's revoked.
It's the ultimate regulatory hammer. The airline simply cannot operate legally anymore. End of story.
But in this case,
In this case, the exact specific reason, the particular non-compliance that triggered the Bulgarian authorities' decision, well, that hasn't been publicly disclosed, so it leaves a bit of a mystery hanging over it.
so we know what the license is gone, but not the specific why. Which is, yeah, frustrating from an analysis point of view, but certainly impactful for the airline.
Hugely impactful.
Can you give us some background on this operator? Were they established for a long time?
No, actually, they were quite new. They only obtained their operating license and that crucial AOC at the very end of 2023.
Oh, wow. Very recent.
Extremely recent.
Yeah.
They had just begun to kind of establish themselves, launching some charter operations out of Pristina in Kosovo on behalf of a local tour operator there.
Okay.
And they even sourced their aircraft, leased them out, to an Italian virtual carrier for a time. So a very, very short operational lifespan before this happened.
And what's their fleet status now, after such a swift and definitive license revocation?
Well, as you'd expect, the company currently has no active aircraft in its fleet. They're grounded.
Right.
They previously operated two Boeing 737-400s, older models. One of those is now listed as inactive with another airline entirely, while the other one is actually being operated by a completely different company now.
So the planes have moved on already.
Seems so. It really highlights the immediate definitive impact of these kinds of stringent regulatory decisions. They literally cease to exist as an operational airline almost overnight. This isn't just about fines or warnings. It's about existential viability.
Yeah, it's a really stark reminder of the fundamental role regulators play in keeping the skies safe and, how quickly an operation can just cease if those core compliance standards aren't met.
Absolutely. The stakes are incredibly high.
Okay, so from these, let's say, challenging regulatory landscapes, let's pivot to a far more optimistic trend. We're seeing how some airlines are not just surviving, but actively reimagining their future.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a major airline based in Manila and a pretty interesting strategic evolution in their business.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really shows the incredible resilience and the diverse pathways airlines can take even in challenging times.
So what's the move?
This particular scheduled carrier, a well-known name, has made a bold move. They've completely rebranded their freight and logistics business division. It's now called PL Cargo.
Cal Cargo. Okay.
It was officially launched at a big event in Manila just recently on June 16th, 2025.
That's a significant rebrand, giving cargo its own identity. What's the strategic rationale behind this as far as the carrier stated? What are they hoping to achieve?
Well, the carrier's president put it quite clearly. He said the goal was to, and I quote, refresh the brand to reflect everything that is going on in the cargo industry
Okay.
and show the PL Cargo is right up there and is worthy of the same branding as the rest of the business, making it an equal pillar, essentially.
Right, elevating its status.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The president also made this very intriguing comment. He said the cargo business is considered much more interesting than the passenger business.
Wait, he actually said that. Much more interesting than the passenger business. That's quite a statement from an airline president.
It is, isn't it?
It really underscores a potential shift in strategic focus, doesn't it? What's the real strategic significance here? And, how is their cargo division actually performing to warrant that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of statement?
Well, it looks like a potentially huge strategic pivot, especially when you dig into the numbers and look at broader industry trends.
Okay, give us the numbers.
Right now, cargo accounts for approximately 5% of the airline's total revenue.
Okay, 5%. Sounds relatively small.
It might sound small on the surface, yeah. However, they have a very ambitious growth target. They want to increase this contribution to 8 or 9%.
Doubling almost.
Pretty much aiming to double its share. And to put that in financial perspective, in 2024, cargo contributed a solid USD 159.7 million to the carrier's overall revenue, which is about USD 3.13 billion. So it's already a significant chunk of cash.
Okay, nearly 160 million. And is that revenue stream actually growing, or is this just an aspirational target based on hope?
Oh no, it's definitely growing. And growing fast. Cargo revenue saw a really robust 12% increase in 2024 alone.
12%, that's strong growth.
Very strong. And it's projected to continue growing significantly this year as well.
What's driving that?
It's largely attributed to the booming e-commerce sector.
Hmm.
Even with global trade disputes, tariffs, other cost disruptions we hear about,
Yeah.
cargo volumes, especially for things bought online, are expected to continue increasing. That consumer demand for rapid delivery is powerful.
Right. People want their stuff quickly.
Exactly. And in fact, their cargo vice president has already confirmed publicly that they are currently exceeding last year's cargo volumes, even partway through this year.
That's really impressive resilience and growth, particularly when we hear about headwinds in other parts of the aviation sector, like we discussed earlier.
It is. It shows where some of the opportunities lie.
So, with this kind of demand, this kind of growth,
Yeah.
are they looking to expand their dedicated freighter fleet? Buy some cargo-only planes to meet it?
They are indeed actively considering acquiring dedicated freighters. It's on the table.
Oh, I sense a bet.
There is a but. A crucial caveat, actually. Their primary hub airport in Manila, it's highly slot constrained.
Okay, explain slot constrained for us in this context. What does that mean practically?
It simply means there's limited availability for takeoff and landing times, or slots. It's a busy airport, and getting permission for a new flight at a desirable time is very difficult and expensive.
Right, so every slot is incredibly valuable.
Hugely valuable. And right now, operating passenger aircraft through those valuable slots currently proves more profitable for the airline overall than dedicating those same slots to cargo-only aircraft would be.
Ah, I see. Because the passenger plane carries people and belly cargo.
Exactly. You get revenue from both.
Hmm.
So it's this classic balancing act between maximizing revenue from your existing constrained infrastructure and investing heavily in future dedicated capacity like freighters. For now, belly cargo on passenger flights remains absolutely key to their strategy.
That makes perfect business sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maximize the yield from the assets you already have, especially in a constrained environment.
Precisely.
So what does their current cargo capacity look like then, given that heavy reliance on passenger aircraft belly holds?
Well, the airline operates quite a diverse fleet overall. They have 78 aircraft currently.
Okay.
And these range in size from the smaller DHC-8 Q400 turboprops right up to the large, long-haul B-77's 300 ERs.
So a mix of regional and international.
Yes, and these aircrafts serve 71 airports across 20 countries. So that network essentially turns every single passenger flight into a cargo opportunity as well.
Right.
And just to give you a scale of that belly capacity, in just the first quarter of 2025 alone, these aircraft collectively carried an impressive 52,600 tons of cargo.
52,000 tons in 3 months, just in the belly.
Just in the belly holds, yeah.
Yeah.
It really demonstrates how integral that belly cargo is to their current operations and clearly to their ambitious growth strategy moving forward.
Wow, what a journey we've taken just now through these really varied aviation developments. It's quite a snapshot.
It really is.
We've seen, critical safety and regulatory compliance issues forcing immediate operational adjustments, leading to severe penalties for a major global carrier. Then the sort of ultimate consequence of regulatory action with an airline's complete cessation of operations because its license was revoked.
Yeah, the Bulgarian example.
And then finally, this really interesting strategic pivot and impressive growth story in the air cargo sector coming out of Manila.
And these seemingly disparate events, they truly underscore how the aviation industry is constantly navigating this landscape. It's defined by, on one hand, immediate operational pressures and crises.
Right.
On the other, really stringent regulatory oversight, and then also this forward-looking business innovation, trying to find the next growth area.
It's a delicate, continuous balance, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And what truly stands out, I think, is how each decision, each regulatory action, each strategic shift, like the cargo rebrand, how it profoundly shapes the future of global air travel and logistics. And that affects all of us, really, whether you're a passenger, a shipper using cargo services, or just an industry observer like us.
Yeah.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About how these intertwined forces, the immediate pressures, the rules, the hunt for new opportunities ultimately determine who soars, who struggles, and who manages to pivot successfully in this incredibly dynamic industry. What strikes you most about that constant tension?